So today we're going to make a line graph, and I'm going to make my line graph here, and you guys should make yours at your seats. And so the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my y-axis, which is the one that goes up and down, and my x-axis, which is the one that goes across. The way that I remember which one is the y and x-axis is I always remember that a y has a line that goes up and down, and that helps me remember that that's the y-axis. The first thing our graph is going to need is it's going to need a title. And I'm going to title this graph time versus temperature of boiling water. And the reason this is the title I'm giving my graph is because those are the things we measured. We kept track of the time, we measured the temperature at different points, and we were using the substance of water. So anyone looking at my graph would be able to figure out what we were doing. I'm going to go ahead and label my different axes. This one here, my y-axis, is going to be labeled temperature. And my x-axis is going to be labeled time. Now it's really important to include your units when you talk about what you're measuring. So with my temperature one, I'm going to include degrees Celsius, and my time one was measured in minutes. Okay, now we're ready for pretty much I think the most difficult part of making a graph, and that is the scaling. But scaling can be really easy. What I like to do is I like to think about where I need to be, where I started, and where I need to be. So let's think about the time. The time, we started at 0, and we measured our time for 10 minutes. So I need to be able to get all the way to 10 minutes. Now, you're probably saying inside, yeah, but we measured it every 30 seconds. So I didn't think ahead. I need to draw my line just a little bit longer here, but I've got plenty of room. So I'm going to measure my line to 10. We did measure by 30 seconds, but what I can do is I can just put a little line in the middle right here to represent the 30 seconds. You know, one really important thing to remember about graphs is the whole purpose of the graph is to show the data to the reader. So you don't want to make it look really complicated. I don't need to label every 30 seconds because I can figure out what the seconds were simply by looking at the other numbers. That's really important in scaling is to remember you don't have to label every single number. Another thing that's good to remember is that you don't always have to start at 0. So in my temperature, my lowest temperature was 24. So I'm going to go ahead and start here at 20 degrees Celsius. And we got all the way up to 96. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, this is 100 here. And then what I do is I say, okay, if this is 20 and this is 100, and I need to get in from 20 to 100, and I just start to count. So this is 40 right here, 60, 80, 100. And that is a really simple way to scale it, and it doesn't take that long at all. So now it's time for me to go ahead and plot my data. So my first measurement at 0, 0 was at about 24. And by a minute, we were up to 40. And I'm just going to keep putting my data in here all the way across. Okay? So when I'm putting my data, what you need to do, and it's better to actually use graph paper, but we didn't use graph paper today, is you simply say at 0, I was at 24. At 30 seconds, I was at 29. At 1 minute, I was at 40. And so that's how you find where your dots will go. It's how many minutes was it, and what temperature was it. So you guys go ahead now and you guys make your own and finish up your own graphs.